Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and Diablo 4 may be getting a Warcraft crossover event. Amid the Season 5 patch note drops revealing the huge unique item changes coming next week, I dug up an old Wowhead data mine of a Warcraft fan favorite making its way into D4. In this weekly gaming news video, I'll also talk about how this may just be Path of Exile's best League launch ever, as well as the terrible news that struck Bungie employees early in the week. We'll start with the Diablo 4 news, and in case you missed my video on the summary of this week's campfire chat, just a reminder that you can find all of my Diablo 4 videos easily sorted on my website, Rhykker.com, which takes us to a word from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Squarespace even has a new AI tool called Squarespace Blueprint to make setting up a website easier than ever, uniquely tailored to your brand or business, and optimized for viewing on every device. It even has optimized SEO tools so that you can launch your website and start getting views as quickly as possible. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website, with tons of design options to pick from. You can easily connect all your social accounts, and also upload your video content and organize your video library. You can sell products or services and offer flexible payment options, including buy now and pay later plans with Afterpay and ClearPay. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. So head to squarespace.com/Rhykker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and use code Rhykker to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker. So, on to the Diablo 4 news. We got the full Season 5 patch notes this week, as well as the campfire chat. Season 5 starts Tuesday, August 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific. Again, I got a video with a full summary of all the changes, but in short, I'm once again hyped for Season 5. They're adding over 50 new legendary and unique items, and they are reworking pretty much every unique item already in the game to make them competitive with tempered legendaries. No, we will not be able to temper uniques, but we won't have to. They are getting crazy good, strong, fun, special powers. I'm excited for Season 5 just for the unique reworks at this point. Oh, and in case you thought Shaco couldn't get much better, the Harlequin crest, check out the old versus new Shaco here. Instead of a 7% cooldown reduction affix, we're getting a whopping 20% cooldown reduction. Just on one item. With greater affixes and masterworking, that number can reach as high as 54% cooldown reduction on that one item. This is just insane. Or here, check out this new Tyrael's Might. 60% all resist by itself. With masterworking and greater affixes, this one single item will be able to max out your resistances, including the plus 7.5% max resistance to all elements that it has. On top of that, they've basically redone class balance completely. It won't just be the Barbarian show anymore. Tons of much needed love going to Sorcerers, for instance. They've also made adjustments to the new Infernal Hordes mode since the PTR. That's the new wave-based game mode. It'll be much more rewarding now. It won't take as long, and it's going to be more action-packed and filled with monster density. Just more exciting altogether. World bosses won't die as quickly in Season 5. We're getting an improved version of the Iron Wolves reputation track that will let us get reputation everywhere, not just in Helltide. Again, my full video has all the details. Oh, and many of the new unique items have unique appearances that you can salvage to get their transmogs. Then, as we explore the full patch notes that Blizzard posted, we catch a few more details that weren't touched upon in the campfire chat. For instance, you can now find unique and mythic items inside whisper caches, and mythic items is just the name for the what we used to call uber uniques, like the Shaco. So you can find them now inside whisper caches. The Gambler, you can get them from the Gambler, and that's in addition to the Helltide Tortured Gifts. There's also some great quality of life changes. For instance, you can now favorite legendary aspects and filter them when crafting at the Occultist. The stats window will now highlight when you've reached the armor cap. There's new UI settings like the ability to have health and resource bars show above your character's head. Bunch more. XP rewards for side quests have been massively buffed. That includes class quests and stuff like, the little gem crafting side quest. Treasure Goblin loot has been improved. They've massively nerfed boss health, which is great. Not because it makes the game easier, but because boss fights could become a slog. Then outside of that, based on the Q&A, I know a lot of people were left with a lot of questions about the upcoming expansion Vessel of Hatred, which launches again with Season 6 in early October. And the devs have heavily hinted that more details will drop at Gamescom, which runs from August 21st to 25th. Based on what they were saying during the Q&A, it sounds like we may learn about details of a Paragon rework and potentially changes to social features during Gamescom. Now, the last Diablo thing that I wanted to call attention to, that World of Warcraft thing that I teased at the start of the video. So, when the Season 5 PTR was live, WoW had data mined this asset here. This is a model of Frostmourne, the Sword of Warcraft's Lich King. In fact, they found technically 2 new models for Frostmourne, one slightly darker than the other. So what could this mean? Why is Frostmourne's model in the game? Well, Frostmourne could be coming as an actual item in D4. We've seen Diablo 3 get Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, for instance. But I think it's unlikely that we're going to get Frostmourne as an actual item in D4. Frostmourne is just way too important, way too recognizable in Warcraft lore, and just putting that in Diablo lore, making it a real item in Diablo lore, I don't think they would do that. So if they're not going to do that, then that means it's probably going to be a transmog, as in it's not going to be part of the lore, it's just like, hey, here's a cool thing. We know that they've already added to the game back in late 2023 a Lich King cosmetic bundle, which included a horse, I believe that's a Lich King's horse and Invincible, and 2 mount trophies. One trophy has the actual Lich King's helmet, and the other has the broken top half or bottom half of Frostmourne itself. And again, these are just as mount trophies. Now it seems like we're getting the full blade, and I don't think this is going to be as a mount trophy, because only half the sword previously fit as a mount trophy. So if this is coming as a cosmetic, it really does look like it's going to be an actual weapon cosmetic. Now, could this end up being a shop cosmetic that we have to spend money on? Well, I guess it could, but when you look at what's in the shop cosmetics are all bundles. You don't just go and buy one weapon cosmetic, it's all part of a set. So theoretically, if this were like the Lich King set, where you get the full armor and the sword, okay, I can see that, but WoWhead did not data mine a full Lich King armor set. So I have a suspicion, and it's kind of a long shot. I don't know that this is going to happen, but hear me out. I think that we may be able to find or earn the Frostmourne transmog in-game somehow, either for free, or I guess technically they can do it as some kind of a Warcraft pre-order thing. But let's stick with earning it in-game for free. Now, if we look at Diablo Immortal, stay with me. Diablo Immortal, in late June, just a few weeks ago, ran from I think late June to early July, there was a World of Warcraft crossover event in Diablo Immortal, literally called the Immortal Lich King event. And during this event, frozen portals would spawn throughout the world in Diablo Immortal, and you had to go in them and kill the Lich King's minions, and you get some kind of a special buff when you were killing 5 monsters. That would increase your damage for 10 seconds, and it would also raise an undead warrior to fight alongside you, because you are the Lich King, basically. And that can stack up to 5 times, so you can have an army of 5 minions following you around, like you were a necromancer yourself. It was a limited time event, and if you completed the event, you would get, wait for it, the Frostmourne weapon cosmetic. So, who knows? Maybe we're going to get a similar event in Diablo 4. Every season so far, since Season 2, we have had some kind of an event. In Season 2, that's what introduced it, right? The first, it was a holiday event. It was the Midwinter Blight. Season 3, we got Lunar New Year event. Season 4, we got the March of the Goblins to celebrate the anniversary of Diablo 4. Are we just going to skip an event in Season 5 and have no event at all? It's possible, but if we do have an event, maybe it's going to be a Lich King event. It is World of Warcraft's 20th anniversary coming up in November. But what do you folks think? Again, it's a bit of a long shot theory, but how do you think we're going to get this Frostmourne cosmetic? Sound off in the comments. Oh, and one last bit of Diablo 4 news. We got a trailer for a second Diablo 4 expansion called The War Within. And with this expansion, we're seeing the return of 2 popular classes from Diablo 3, the shield-wielding Holy Crusader and the mystical Jungle Witch Doctor, although they seem to have given the Witch Doctor some kind of Avatar Navi skin theme. I guess it's some kind of crossover event or something. The War Within launches on August 26th, and Wait, what? This is a World of Warcraft trailer. You sure? But that's a Diablo 3 Crusader. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, The War Within for World of Warcraft launches on August 26th at 3 p.m. Pacific, and there's currently a free weekend until August 4th for any inactive WoW player. Then in Path of Exile news, we're a week into the new league, and it is possibly the greatest league yet. The game reached a new all-time concurrent player peak of just under 230,000 on Steam alone, and retention has been doing well too. The previous peak was over a year ago, March 2023, when Steam players peaked at 210,000. And I think this success is due to a combination of excellent quality of life changes, primarily from the addition of the currency exchange market, which is an in-game auction house for currency, as well as a robust league mechanic that has been received very well. And while the currency exchange market was just a test, it is, I guess, for present tense, it is just a test. It's not guaranteed to come to core. At this point, the devs really have opened Pandora's box. You cannot give this level of quality of life to players and then take it away. I'd be very surprised if the currency exchange does not make it to core next league. I imagine they were just saying it's not guaranteed to go to core in the event that something absolutely catastrophically unforeseen would happen, but everything's fine. Everyone loves this. Then the town management game has also been really successful, which I'm really pleasantly surprised to see. When GGG does their big board game style leagues, they tend to be the riskiest plays that they do, and I always pray that those risks pay off, and this one looks like it has been a big win. And I'm sure part of what has made it so well received is that it seems like it was really well balanced right out the gate. It didn't take a week or two of hot fixes to get it feeling rewarding enough or difficult enough. You can interact with the theme from the beginning without the monster damage being overwhelming while leveling. The gold costs and the rewards, they all scale up nicely over time. Just everything works really well. And perhaps craziest of all, they've managed to make some kind of like town management, Farmville type Facebook sim game feel like a natural part of an action RPG. It doesn't feel like some annoying thing you gotta go off and do in order to get back to your game. Then early in the week, the devs released a patch that contained a bunch of improvements and bug fixes, just more wins. Now, there was an exploit going around for a brief time in the economy, and between the time that the devs became aware of it and the time that they hotfixed it, it took them just over an hour. Such a speedy response there. Then they locked all the wealth that was generated from the exploit so that it cannot spread into the economy. And they also made note of all the accounts that participated in the exploit while they determined whether to action those accounts or not. Overall, GGG handled this pretty much as well as anyone could hope to. Now, there is one criticism that I'm seeing from at least high-level play in this league, and apparently it's issues that existed with Tier 17 maps prior to this expansion even releasing. And despite changes, these issues continue to exist. And it's largely around the scaling of the difficulty of T17 via the special mods. Now, this is nothing that I have any personal experience with, so I turn the question to you folks. How do you feel about T17? Is it in a good place or not? Sound off in the comments. Meanwhile, for those of you diving into PoE, starting off the league, some beginner tips for the league mechanic itself. When you start building up your town and your shipping routes, it's best to focus only on shipping whatever goods are being requested, as opposed to other stuff, and also ship the quantity that is being requested as well. Your goal when you start off is to raise your favor with any given port as quickly as possible, because that's going to unlock you're going to get better rewards with better favor. So just focus on 2 ports that you want to build up your favor with and get started on those. And also only send 1 ship to 1 port at a time. Don't send 2 ships to 1 port in order to maximize your favor gain. But I encourage our PoE veterans to sound off in the comments with your tips for new players about the league and, hey, about PoE as well. Because now we move into some grim industry news. We saw this week over 200 layoffs at Bungie. 220 to be precise, which amounts to almost 20% of their workforce. And the cited reasons for the layoffs include rising costs of development, industry shifts, and enduring economic conditions. And it sounds like in the coming months, they're planning to shift another 155 workers over to Sony Interactive Entertainment, their parent company. Basically, these people would have been let go as well, but Bungie seems to have struck a deal with Sony to find these people jobs internally elsewhere. Meanwhile, Bungie's also working with Sony to spin out one of their incubation projects, which is an action game in an entirely new science fantasy universe. I guess they have a certain theme. And basically, that's going to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios. As per journalist Jason Schreier, that's going to be roughly 75 people are going to be moving from Bungie to this new studio. So the 220 people laid off, minus these 75 people who are going to form a new studio, minus the 155 that are going over to Sony Interactive Entertainment. Bungie CEO Pete Parsons explained that the studio was stretched too thin in too many incubation projects, and that they were overly ambitious with their rapid expansion during an economic slowdown, which resulted in burning through all of their money, and now they've been running in the red for a while. And it sounds like everyone who will remain at Bungie after all of this will be focused entirely on Destiny 2 and the upcoming extraction shooter Marathon. And if we take a step back, we see that Bungie has actually been on this path for a while, and things will continue to move towards a complete Sony takeover. You see, Bungie was acquired by Sony in 2022, and though it technically remained an independent company, its board of directors was split between Bungie and Sony executives. The Bungie CEO, Pete Parsons, had the tiebreaker vote, so technically Bungie was in charge. However, IGN got some inside scoops sometime last year that revealed that Bungie only retained its independence on the contingency that Bungie would meet certain financial goals. Should Bungie fail to meet those goals, then Sony has the right to dissolve the board of directors and take complete control of Bungie. And that's why by the end of 2023, Bungie decided to lay off 100 employees and employ a number of drastic cost-cutting measures, which was certainly the sign of a company desperately trying to reach a financial goal. Now, as per journalist Jeff Grubb, the Sony takeover has quietly happened. There will be a gradual process by which Bungie will lose its autonomy, and it'll become just another PlayStation studio. And as per a new GameFile report, caught by IGN, when Bungie was acquired by Sony, the alternative at the time was facing insolvency. In other words, Bungie's financial situation was already so bad at that point that it was either sell the company to Sony or shut down. Allegedly, Destiny 2's last expansion, The Final Shape, which was critically acclaimed by players, sold worse than the previous expansion, Lightfall, which was not as well received. And one can argue that Lightfall's failure led to The Final Shape selling worse than it should have. We know that at least two Bungie executives, part of upper management, Mark Noseworthy and Luke Smith, were reportedly part of this week's layoffs, which lends further support to the idea that Sony is starting to clean house. Bungie's had quite a tumultuous journey as a company. It was founded in 1991, then it was acquired by Microsoft in 2000 while it was developing Halo. Then in 2007, Bungie split from Microsoft, leaving Microsoft with the rights to Halo. Then in 2010, Bungie revealed that it was entering a 10-year publishing relationship with Activision. Bungie released Destiny 1 in 2013, Destiny 2 in 2017, and in 2019, Bungie got out of its contract with Activision early, because apparently Bungie and Activision had different ideas on what to do with the Destiny franchise, so there was some brief celebration about Bungie's freedom once again, and then Bungie was acquired by Sony in 2022. So basically Bungie was free, then they were owned by Microsoft, and they worked free of Microsoft, and they got into a deal with Activision, they worked themselves free from Activision, and then they got bought by Sony. And it seems this is actually a rare instance in the industry where a game dev has actually thrived better when it wasn't independent. Some would even say that, and shockingly I have to admit, that Bungie was at its best under Activision. In any case, here we are today, and I hope all the employees laid off are able to find other opportunities soon. Now, here's an interesting story. Activision conducted human experiments on its Call of Duty player base to test whether skill-based matchmaking is actually good or not for the health of a game. Apparently, a lot of Call of Duty players, or influencers at least, complain about skill-based matchmaking. With skill-based matchmaking, the game basically tries to match you in games with players of roughly the same skill level as you, so that your win-loss ratio ends up being about 50-50. And one complaint you tend to see is, well, it's frustrating that I'm getting better at the game, I'm improving my skills, but I'm not winning more because I'm just matched against better players. It's like being on a treadmill or an escalator to nowhere. If matches were just random, then as I get better, I'll win more games, right? And while there is an argument to be had there, and frankly it's the way things were back in my day at least, the old school FPS days, back when we didn't have any kind of matchmaking, just public lobbies, you would join them and, that's it. I'm not saying things were better that way, but that just was the reality. You'd sometimes get these pub all-stars come into your lobby, they would just curb stomp everyone, and sometimes you would be the pub all-star, ending a game with a KD of 20-1. But anyway, in early 2024, Activision ran a test in Modern Warfare 3. 50% of players saw a decrease in skill-based matchmaking. So, they're not completely eliminating it, they just decreased the amount of skill-based matchmaking for these players. And the result? The returning player rate dropped for 90% of players, and the quit rate rose by 80%. From this experiment, Activision concluded that if they actually fully remove skill-based matchmaking, the player base would rapidly erode in the span of a few months. They estimated that skill-based matchmaking improves the player experience for 80 to 90% of the player base, leading them to stick with the game longer and quit matches less frequently. And honestly, this isn't surprising. A lot of people tend to forget that these are zero-sum games. For everyone who wins, there's at least one other person who loses. If the highly skilled people are going to have 95% win rates, then that means there's a lot of people who are going to have much lower win rates, much lower than 50% win rates. You'll have a bunch of people who are barely ever winning, in fact. And that creates an environment in which only a very specific kind of player will thrive. The kind of player who doesn't mind a trial by fire as they learn the ropes and get better at the game with constant beatdowns and just being thrown to the wolves. But for the average gamer today, they're not looking for an experience where they are losing most of the time, and the data backs this up. And so what happens in that case where you remove skill-based matchmaking? The noob stoppers, they get to feel good, they're winning 95% of the time. The noobs, then, they start feeling like crap, they start leaving the game. So the lower skilled players are getting filtered out more and more, leaving only higher and higher skilled players. So the win rates for these noob stompers, that starts to decrease because there's fewer noobs to stomp, until eventually they become the noobs being stomped by the uber pros. And then those people quit. And then in the end, all that's left is a tiny community of pros that can't sustain healthy player population. And I'm not going to name the exact game here, but I saw this happen with an FPS games community that I was actively involved with, and I saw it dwindle down, and there was just us basically, pro-level clan people that were playing against each other, and all the casual people bled away. And anytime they would try to join in, who was there to play against other than us? And they would just get demolished and leave. But what do you folks think? Is there any strong argument in favor of removing skill-based matchmaking? Now, personally, I'm cool with there being a ranked and unranked mode, where in unranked, there's no skill-based matchmaking. This way you can team up with friends of different skill levels, all play together. But I'm talking about, is there any argument for removing skill-based matchmaking entirely from a game? Sound off in the comments. Because that's going to wrap up this week's video, but do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discuss how Diablo 4's max level may be dropping to 60 in the expansion. Thanks for watching, special thanks to my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more gaming content.